Welcome to Gamecock Pod Live.
For the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be committed to the University of Gamecock.
This is Rogers again to the 25, 20, 15, 10. Rogers scores! Jackie Bradley Jr. delivered for the Gamecocks. Lost it up, looking for Kelly. Touchdown! Can you believe it?
And South Carolina is sending shockwaves through the SEC.
Frederick plays it in at the buzzer. That's a win! Unbelievable! I don't believe it!
And now, live from Studio 54 of the Gamecock Pod Studios, here's the Cockfather himself, Keith Alsep.
All right, everybody, welcome into a special pre-Independence Day Gamecock Pod Live at a special time, going early today at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Welcome in. Thanks for joining the show. Today's show is sponsored by the award-winning full-service catering company servicing the greater Charlotte, Fort Mill, Rock Hill, Lancaster area. Of course, I'm talking about Nana's Porch, your go-to for all your catering needs. Whether it's a banquet, a wedding, a corporate event, or the big backyard bash with a whole hog barbecue, Nana's Porch has got you covered. If you have an event that requires a food trailer, Nana's Porch voted among the top 3 food trailers in Charlotte by the local newspaper poll. So you know it's good. And as we all know, the award-winning pimento cheese voted both number 1 and number 2 in the meat and cheese category by the North Carolina Specialty Foods Association. Unbelievable. My favorite, smoky jalapeno, and then the great regular flavor. It goes great on a chip, great on a cracker. My favorite is with the sea salt pita chips. Also goes great on a sandwich. Fried green tomatoes. I mean, you can't beat it. So go to nanasporch.com. That's nanasporch.com. Tell my good friend Chris Payne I sent you. You'll love it. I guarantee it. And I strongly urge you to support this Gamecock owned and operated business. Also, if you already do not subscribe to the homepage on YouTube, join. You'll get notified before every single show. Give us a like if you like the show. If you love the show, give us a 5-star review. Also on Apple Podcasts, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Give us a 5-star review. Same for Spotify. All right, let's jump right into our Nana's Porch news, notes, and headlines for today. Also, like Craig, who's already in the Nana's Porch chat box. Hey, fams, leave your questions, comments for Payton Titus, award-winning journalist at the state and Go Gamecock. She's the beat writer for Gamecock women's basketball. She covers football and everything else. She will be joining us in just a few minutes. All right. Number 1, not good news. Taylor Edwards no longer with the South Carolina football program, was the director of player personnel and headed up the in-house recruiting operation. This is a major loss for Shane Beamer. I'm not going to comment publicly here. I don't know how you replace him, especially at this time of year, but if you want details, tune in next Tuesday night for overtime on the Garnet and Blacktown Hall. More details on how you can do that coming up in just a few minutes. All right, Gamecock baseball staying hot in the transfer portal. Man, I love this baseball staff. Terry Rooney, he tweets out the welcome homes. Clint, good to see you this morning. How you doing, my man? They're great. He's got like a welcome home with the outline of the state of South Carolina inside a baseball graphic. Craig, I hope you didn't catch a contact buzz if you were in downtown Asheville for all 5 days. If you're walking the streets, there's some good herb that's being smoked there. Full discretion, I have never smoked marijuana in my life, but I probably had a few contact buzz over the years. But you got to love Terry Rooney. He tweeted out 3 welcome homes yesterday. Monty Lee, Cox on top. I mean, you got to love it. You got to love it. Baseball is on fire right now. Okay, the Gamecocks have picked up a major commitment, okay, from Henry Kazmar, okay, not the Casbah, but the Kazmar. He's the shortstop from Ohio State, 5'10", 185 as a true freshman. He was first team All Big Ten. He started in all 55 games, hit 293, led the Buckeyes with hits with 61 and RBIs with 46, 29 runs scored, 10 doubles, 7 home runs, had 17 multi-hit games. Okay, as a sophomore, he hit 320 with 72 hits, which led the team, 10 doubles, 2 triples, 7 homers, 36 RBIs. He can play short or third base on the left side of the infield. He played shortstop for the Buckeyes, 958 fielding percentage as a freshman, 952 as a sophomore. Okay. The Gamecocks have added several other players as well. Probably not since the last time we got together, but nonetheless, staying hot on the recruiting trail. Here we go. They've added, when you count the junior college players, okay, Caden Gaskin hit 403. He's an infielder, 59 RBI, 73 runs scored in 55 games from Northwest Florida State. Dalton Mayshore, okay, from St. Mary's. He's a center fielder, hit 338 with 13 homers, 41 RBIs. Jace Rita from Kansas City Community College, a big first baseman that hit 417 with 23 homers, 138 RBIs in 101 games. Brandon Stone, JUCO pitcher. Brandon Clark, a left-handed JUCO pitcher. I think he may be the one that may be too good to get to campus. Wyatt Evans in the portal from Tennessee. Ashton Crowther, who pitched at Miami. Then you get Lexington native and Monty Lee getting a dude, Nathan Hall, a Lexington native played the last 2 years at Clemson. Jarvis Evans, a 6'4" pitcher who spent the last 2 seasons at Georgia. And Charlie Meglio from Campbell, where as a freshman he was all CAA. He hit .275 with 9 homers, 28 RBIs, made 43 starts on the left side of the infield, 31 games at third base and 15 at shortstop. Coach Ashley Chastain also staying hot on the recruiting trail, adding another former player from Charlotte in Ella Chansey, the third baseman, whose first team All AAC, first team All AAC, All Tournament, preseason softball America top 10 third baseman. This past year, she started all 57 games, hit .316 with 38 RBIs, 31 runs scored, 6 homers, 8 doubles, and 24 walks, and added 8 stolen bases. She'll walk in and start at South Carolina for sure. Gamecock baseball also, or softball also landed All-State player from Fort Mill Ashley Ridge High School, infielder Audrey Wilson. She hit over 500 as a senior. So she is staying hot on the recruiting trail. Lamont Paris has tabbed a familiar name. Former Gamecock assistant coach Will Bailey will be joining the staff. Lamont Paris met with the media earlier this week, said announcement would be coming soon. Rothstein broke that. And Will Bailey is someone who's familiar to me. He coached my daughter's godfather at the University of Maine. He's a Chicago native who spent a lot of time at St. Louis. This past season, he was at Loyola of Chicago. He left Maine to go to LaSalle with their head coach. He also coached 2 years under Frank Martin at South Carolina, and he is a great player development guy. He is an excellent recruiter, and he will not have Frank Martin like an anchor wrapped around his neck when he goes out on the recruiting trail. All right, so we got a couple more Nana Sports news notes and headlines. But let's go out to the Nana Sports guest line and bring in the award-winning beat writer for Go Gamecocks in the state. And we're going to jump into all things Gamecock women's basketball, WNBA, etc. Man, Payton Titus looks rested after a great vacation. Welcome back into the show. Payton, how are you?
I'm good. I am well rested, much more well rested than I was in May. So happy about that. Excited because things are going to be starting up here again soon before we know it, which will be fun. But yeah, how are you?
I am better than I deserve. So I'm bringing you in because I want your remark on this. I could have mentioned something. and then we'll jump into it. But so this week, usually we award the Dick of the Week award here on Gamecock Pod Daily and Gamecock Pod Live. And that is Clemson head football coach Dabo Swinney, okay, because he refused a request from ABC and ESPN to move the South Carolina Clemson game to Friday night, the night after Thanksgiving, which would have showcased that game, brought more national attention because there are less games on Friday than on Saturday. And Peyton, it just makes too much sense for the ass clown that is Dabo Swinney to move the game. I mean, it's like he doesn't want to showcase his program. He doesn't want to showcase South Carolina's program. South Carolina would have returned the favor the following year and had the game labeled a Black Friday, where I'm sure the Gamecocks would have at least worn black jerseys at home, hopefully with garnet helmets and white pants, which is without a doubt the greatest Gamecock uniform in school history. I say that because the man in black, Joe Morrison, made that look famous, and Sterling Sharp wore that uniform, and he was pretty good. So your thoughts, and we'll just call this the BP Skinner Clothier Dick of the Week Award. I'm wearing a polo from the Gamecock collection there at BP Skinner Clothiers, located in the heart of Columbia's historic Vista. Your thoughts on Clemson refusing to move the game to Friday night?
Yeah, I think it's odd for sure. I don't know like what the frustration is, because like you said, the less games and more eyeballs on you, and it's not like anybody's doing anything on Friday night, the day after Thanksgiving, to where they like wouldn't watch that game. So yeah, I don't really understand that either. I remember, I'm pretty sure, if I remember this correctly, that the Florida FSU game got moved to Friday a few years ago, and I remember that happening and being kind of bummed, and not, I don't really know why. Maybe just because it's like different from normal and different from tradition. So maybe it's just one of those things where, I mean, there are other instances where we've seen Dabo Swinney kind of like not necessarily wanting to, I guess, being resistant to moving as things change in the landscape, whether that be the transfer portal or NIL or whatever. So maybe that's just a product of him wanting things to stay the same, which doesn't necessarily make any kind of sense. But other than that, I can't really think of a reason why he would be kind of bummed about that, because I just feel like you said, less competition for viewership and things like that. And not only would that help South Carolina, which I'm sure he doesn't care about, but like it would also help Clemson. So yeah, odd move for sure.
Yeah, so look, everybody's off the day after Thanksgiving, right? So instead of getting caught up in getting out in all the shopping, which nobody really wants to do anyway on Black Friday, you can do
Not
it all
at night anyway either. Like
right?
Never at night.
So after Thanksgiving, you can just go to the game, pack up, tailgate, go to the game on Friday night. It's not like you got to be there for a noon kickoff or anything, which you may have to be on Saturday. And then you go back home, and then you got all day Saturday and Sunday to eat your, turkey leftovers and whatever desserts you have, and eat turkey sandwiches on white bread with Duke's mayonnaise, and watch the rest of college football on that weekend and rest up, and you have an extra day to recuperate, particularly, if you may have an adult beverage or 10 before the game or after the game in celebration. So it just made too much sense, quite frankly, on that. By the way, I would add, according to the Big Spurs, John Whittle, Gamecock transfer portal commitment Henry Kazar from Ohio State. Also visited Auburn, Georgia, Florida. Sorry about that, Peyton. And NC State. But Florida baseball did come out of their regional as a 3 seed from the Oklahoma State regional, beat Clemson in the Supers, and made it back to Omaha. Kevin O'Sullivan, I mean, he's more steady than a few good men on a Sunday rainy afternoon, according to that's one of John Rothstein's things. All right, so Lawrence in the chat box has the first question for you today. What's the word on Adele Tack being full go at summer practice?
Yeah, I mean, things look good from everything that I have seen on social media. She's been in the gym with Molly a lot. She's been posting, she does vlogs on TikTok, and I guess sometimes she also posts them as Instagram Reels, which are fun, and sometimes they're like, you know, day in the life type stuff. And so she's shown herself getting some rehab in early before practices, and all the pictures and video that I've seen of everybody in the gym have not included her like doing anything different or you know, taking it easy or anything. So I think the fact that, you know, she came early and she was able to get adjusted to everything, and then also be in the hands of people who have, you know, helped women deal with these kinds of injuries before, whether that be, you know, Letitia Amihir was one that had a very similar kind of situation. And then even other players who got injured, like during the season with Ravens rehab and everything like that. And she's back and better than ever, we were able to see. So, you know, I think she should be good to go. I'm excited for her to see what this season looks like and how she can kind of step into her role and carve out a role for herself. Because we keep hearing all these Leah Boston comps from Coach Staley, and that is not something to be taken lightly, I don't think.
I agree. So I've seen a few of the reels, and so there's the one where she goes in. You see her in the training room, and it looks like she's got acupuncture and muscle stim going on at the same time.
Yeah.
But she's in the gym. She's with the players in the workouts. So, yeah, I fully have always, because I researched that injury, I asked my orthopedic surgeon about it. And it's not like recovering from an ACL or MCL tear or anything. It's really like a 8 to 12 week recovery. That's for normal human beings. For an athlete, I'm sure it's probably a little more, but at the same time, like you said, coming in early, having the surgery in February, having state-of-the-art training facilities, and perhaps the best strength performance coach in the country in Molly Benetti. It's just been a huge advantage rather than her staying, you know, at Grand Prairie and doing it there. So, yeah, I think she's definitely on track. All right, so one baseball note I left out. Cole Messina adds one more All-American honor, and that is third team academic All-American. So congratulations to him. All right, so Peyton, we know Asia Wilson will represent the United States once again in the Olympics. One of my favorite all-time players, LA, Letitia Amihir, was announced to be on the Canadian Olympic team. Did Brazil qualify for the Olympics or not? I don't think they did, right? Because
No.
and they did not qualify. So too bad about that. All right, so let's talk about WNBA All Stars here for a second. We are going to talk more about the team. So I saw a post on Twitter yesterday that had the top 5 vote getters from last year. Not 20 years ago, not 10 years ago, last year. Okay, and Asia Wilson was the leading fan vote getter with 95,860 votes, followed by Breanna Stewart, Brittany Griner, Aaliyah Boston was 4th, Jackie Young. By the way, I will go ahead and say, spoiler alert for this segment, 3 former Gamecocks named WNBA All Star, and not for the first time. Asia Wilson, who's the best player in the world, Aaliyah Boston, 2nd year in a row, and then Alicia Gray, I think her 2nd or 3rd time being named All Star. All right, but so for this year, okay, the top 5 vote getters, Caitlin Clark, 700,335. All right, that's like an 800% increase year over year. Okay, if this was the presidential election, okay, there would be a certain candidate that would be saying it's a rigged election. Okay, but Aaliyah Boston, the 2nd leading vote getter, which she's getting more votes than Asia Wilson, 618,680. Asia Wilson, 607,000 votes compared to 98,000 a year ago. Breanna Stewart, and then Angel Reese, 381,518. And I think, Camilla, had she not missed the first 3 weeks of the season, I certainly think she would have been named WNBA All Star. But congratulations to all of them. And, Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, they got that battle going on. They also got the battle with Camilla Cardoso, the killer Camilla going on. That's a pretty dynamic relationship, and you have the rivalry going, right? And Aaliyah Boston, I have to say, this year, she's not taking any ish off anybody at any time. Jonquel Jones, Asia Wilson, Brittany Griner, it doesn't matter. She's getting some of her too nice out of her. Your reaction?
Yeah, no, the All-Star roster, very exciting stuff. It's cool to see the votes increase so much like that, because I feel like so much of the conversation about the sport growing has been attributed to specific people in a vacuum, and not talking about how all the combined effects of all these different characters and people at play who have elevated the sport can kind of like spread the wealth, if that makes sense. So like people talking about, they only care about, or the only reason people are watching is because of Caitlin. It's like, well, we see she's a huge part of that, but we see that she doesn't exist in a vacuum, and women's sports don't exist in a vacuum. And so all like her and Angel Reese and Asia Wilson and Dawn Staley, all these people their impact is working in tandem to grow the sport. And I think those voting numbers show that, because not only do you have so many people who are coming out and voting for Caitlin, but you saw how much Asia Wilson and Aaliyah Boston's numbers increased from just the previous year. So that's a really cool thing to see. It's funny because watching games talking about Aaliyah Boston's niceness out of her. First, I just want to say I'm so glad that it seems like Indiana has kind of figured out what to do and how to get her really involved on the offense. Like her and Caitlin, their connection and stuff has improved vastly from the beginning of the season. Cause I remember watching initially and being like, I don't understand. Like I'm not necessarily like an X's and O's expert, but like I don't understand what the game plan is. Like didn't look like plays were really being run all that much. Excuse me. And so it was just like, I don't really know what's going on here. So the fact that the reigning rookie of the year, unanimous reigning rookie of the year, was like having such like kind of lackluster seemingly performances to start the season off, it was like something's wrong. But now we've seen her, you know, as of late, the team is having success. She's having success. It's not a coincidence. So I'm glad that they've been able to kind of figure that out. And then talking about Aaliyah's niceness, that's a funny thing too, because I'll be watching the games and I'll think about how I feel like, I don't know, this is just like a theory, so I don't actually know any of this, right? But like Aaliyah doesn't necessarily subscribe to the kind of like typical big attitude where they kind of like flex on people, if that makes sense. Like in game, she doesn't necessarily work like that. So when you see all of these bigs kind of going at her, because I see the dialogue from fans, right, where they're like, oh, this big always tries to, you know, mess with Aaliyah and all that kind of stuff. And I really think it's just because like it looks like that because Aaliyah just doesn't, that's not how she really carries herself. And so then by contrast, you can really see, it seems like people try to go at her. But I mean, I think part of that is like they respect her game and all this kind of stuff. And so, but it is nice to see her get a little bit more aggressive and things like that, because I know that's something that was talked about as well, where it was like if she could like tap into that, if she kind of had that like level in her brain or her personality or whatever, she could be even better than she was before. So that's fun as well. But yeah, All-Star game, 3 Gamecocks, same 3 Gamecocks from last year in the All-Star game again. Very exciting. You'll be splitting them up because last year they all got to play on Asia's team, and this year it's going to be 2 against 1. But yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, All-Star is so interesting to me nowadays. I was talking with a friend about this the other day, and this is like not necessarily having to do with Gamecocks or anything, but it's like the fact that the fan vote has so much weight now.
No doubt.
Yeah,
Right,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think the internet is working the best here today.
Yeah.
Thanks, AT&T. But it is good to see her not backing down, right? Like not from Brittany Griner, not from Jonquel Jones. If they push her, she's pushing back. Jonquel Jones tried to get in her face, and Aaliyah kept coming. And so I really like it. And Alicia Gray, I just love her. I mean, the Lunch with Lish videos now have been topped with Tea Time with Tessa. But her personality and her just ferociousness on the floor, I just love her. I mean, I think about, you know, we talked about the 2020 team that washed out because of COVID that easily would have won a national championship. But think about in the transfer portal landscape, if Kayla Davis and Alicia Gray would have been eligible in 2016 with Khadijah Sessions and Tiffany Mitchell and Asia Wilson and Tina Roy and Elena Coates and a bunch of other players, I don't think they lose that Sweet 16 game to Syracuse because they would have had too much three-point shooting. You couldn't have just taken away Tiffany Mitchell. And so South Carolina was number 1 in the nation going into that tournament, by the way. So I'm really happy for Alicia Gray. She's got to be one of the top 2 or 3 left-handed players in the world. All right. All right, so let's go back to Joyce Edwards and let's talk about her. MVP, once again, performance for Team USA in the 18 and under America. I mean, look, let's face it, there was only one competitive game. I mean, I tried to watch those games. It was, I think against the DR, it was 80-10 at halftime. I mean, come on. But she was, for up until I think the championship game, she was averaging more points than minutes played per game. The Team Canada did give them a run. It was 80-69, but in that game, Edwards, I think 16 or 17 points, 13 rebounds, 5 steals, and she was named the MVP once again. And she's shown the propensity that, hey, I can shoot the three a little bit. So your thoughts on her performance?
Yeah, definitely versatility was something that I was going to bring up because we've talked about it, right? How she could really play like 1 through 4, which is wild. And she definitely showed that in these games. I think something that's interesting, like when we talk about the international stuff, like this group is only together for such a so much time, right? So in terms of like chemistry and communication and things like that, it's going to be a little bit harder to figure those things out. And there might be a few like miscues or whatever and like sloppy things that happen just because you're not used to each other, right? And so I think the fact that she was able to be so efficient and contribute so much while also like the other teammates contributing so much, like I thought scoring was pretty evenly spread out among the team. But like, for her to have such a standout performance throughout the whole tournament, where she was like very undoubtedly MVP caliber, right, is just so impressive. And I'm really excited to see what happens with this South Carolina team and her, because it's not going to be just kind of like dropping in, playing with some really elite talent and then kind of dropping out, right? It's going to be surrounded by elite talent, but also they've had time to establish relationships with each other and get to know each other really well. And so we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, really exciting. I mean, she had in one game 16 points, 10 rebounds, so that double, but also like 3 steals. Right. And then there was against Mexico, she shot 70%, like 7 of 10 from the field. And it's just like, that's crazy. So yeah, I mean, she has just MVP of this, MVP of McDonald's All-American, Jordan Brand Classic, Nike Hoop Summit. Like, I mean, we talk about it, pretty often about how she might not technically be ranked the #1 recruit in the nation, but like she was playing with all the most highly touted recruits in her class. And she like beyond, far and away was the most outstanding, the most integral kind of performer there. And I think that should make South Carolina fans very excited. If they weren't already excited, because I imagine that they were.
Yeah. So, I know a few things about basketball. I've been a basketball coach for over 30 years, going back to when I started. But to me, having seen multiple times all the players from this class, to me, probably my top 4 would be Joyce Edwards, 1, Kennedy Smith, 2, Sarah Strong, 3, and Kate Koval would be number 4. She's the big that's going to Notre Dame, South Carolina, trying to recruit her. So, yeah. And, then, quite frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if Maddie McDaniel has a better collegiate career than Jelani Cambridge. We'll just have to see. Look, Ohio State, always overrated. That's where great players go to have mediocre collegiate careers before great careers in the WNBA like Kelsey Mitchell, right? She's a walking bucket. But at Ohio State, they never did. They had her and a bunch of other great players. They never do anything. All right, so let's pay some bills. So if you enjoy watching the show, like today with our great award-winning guest, Payton Titus, or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and would like more of this show, I urge you to join our growing Gamecock family by becoming an annual or monthly VIP subscriber to the show. You'll be able to get the show every single day, Monday through Friday, and listen to great guests like the famous, world famous Payton Titus of Go Gamecocks, Hale McGranahan, Alex Jones, and John Whittle from the Big Spur, Mike Yuva from Gamecock Central, Payton's cohort at Go Gamecocks, Jordan K., Michael W. Bratton, the host of that SEC podcast, who'll be reappearing soon, as well as 24/7 college football national writer Brad Crawford, who dropped a little piece of news this morning, Payton, saying that the Gamecocks will have a new look on their football uniforms. Probably some subtle changes, as Under Armour, which is basically going extinct. Okay, they're on the endangered species list. And many, many more. As a VIP subscriber, you can join live on our weekly Zoom meeting, the Garnet and Black Town Hall, which is usually every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We also record it and put it up for all our VIP subscribers that can't tune in live. Okay, but then we drop off and have an unrecorded overtime session. That's where all the real scoop is dropped, and probably a few F-bombs on occasion as well. During football season, you get our most popular podcast during the season, The Morning After, which is every Sunday morning. And there are more VIP perks in the works. Also, nobody, no podcast, no YouTube show does a better job covering Gamecock women's basketball than Gamecock Pod Live and Gamecock Pod Daily. So follow me on Twitter at KAllsep. Follow the show at Gamecock Pod on Twitter. Go to the top of the homepage. You can click the link. It'll take you right to our Patreon page. Signing up is easy. You'll love it. I guarantee it. Or you can go to Patreon. That's patreon.com/Gamecock Pod Daily. No spaces, all lowercase. It'll take you to it. And if all else fails, just hit the Googler and type in Gamecock Pod Daily. You'll get there. You'll love it. I guarantee it. A monthly VIP subscription, less than the cost of one trip to Starbucks. So join our growing Gamecock Pod community. If you sign up now, you'll get almost 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. All right. So Payton, now back to the show. So it's not like you said Joyce Edwards just dropping in and walking into the starting lineup. Okay. This South Carolina team, now we know the roster is full. I don't think we knew that the last time we had you on the show, because we knew Miriam Dauda, the all-SEC player from Arkansas, 6'4", was joining the team. A former another McDonald's All-American joined the team. But Sakima Walker later announced she would return for her 5th year. So you return 4 starters from a 38-0 undefeated national championship team. The only team in history, by the way, I might add, to go back to the Final Four after an undefeated season, but with an entirely different new starting 5. And you return everybody that started and played outside of Camila Cardoso. You return Raven Johnson, who absolutely, after the first quarter, when she went on Caitlin Clark, Clark was abysmal after the hot start. Raven Johnson basically embarrassed her, picking her pocket, blocking shots. Tahina Pau, the nation's leader in 3-point field goal percentage returns. Breezy Hall, a.k.a. Big Shot. Breezy, shout out to her. She just had a birthday. She returns. And then Chloe Kitts, who had a double-double in the national championship game after, quite frankly, some subpar performances. Dawn Staley stuck with her, put her back in, and she played great. Then Malaysia Fulwiley, outside of Hannah Hidalgo, the most dynamic freshman in the country. I can still hear Ryan Rucco saying the Eiffel Tower is shaking after Malaysia Fulwiley wrapped it around behind her back and went up and laid it in. Tessa Johnson, what a great player and a great personality. You get the tea time with Tessa, and she was just recently also featured in Slam magazine, just like Dawn Staley was on the cover. There's a T-shirt, very popular in WNBA circles. And then Sanaya Fagan, and I think the presumptive 5th starter going into the season, Ashlyn Swatkins, who had 20 rebounds in the national semifinals. So just those 8, isn't that enough? But it's not, but yet it's not, right?
Yeah, it's so wild. We've talked about it so many times, and I've talked about it with other people so many times. I went to a conference the other day, and people were talking to me about, year one and the team and everything like that, how it was. And I was like, yeah, and next year they could do it all again, which is really so nuts. And I'm so excited to see what happens this year because, with Ashlyn starting, you got to think she's like an early contender for Defensive Player of the Year because last year she didn't get those kinds of accolades despite the fact that, she led the team in blocks and defensive rating and all of these other things, right? So hopefully her being in that starting position will help garner a little bit more attention from people who aren't necessarily watching every game, I guess. But, seeing some of the pictures and video from, I think maybe it was the first Final Four Friday, or maybe it was just some workout from whatever week, where I think it was her, I can't remember the 2 other players, but they were doing basically like wall sits with a weighted ball on their laps. And she just her face was just unfazed. And I think the caption they put on there was it's hard or something like that. So love the Legally Blonde shout.
Yeah, they're squatting on the wall with the weighted ball. And Ashlyn was like, I could do this all day.
Right. And so watching that, knowing already how athletic and strong and good at basketball she is, the fact that she was able to step into her voice a little bit more last year and kind of help direct her teammates on both ends of the floor, particularly on the defensive end. You know, I'm excited to see how she even gets to elevate her game more from last year, which last year just already like in of itself felt like such a big step up. And Tessa is another person who I have seen putting in some extra work in the weight room. Molly Benetti has posted a lot of stuff on Instagram where I think like extra credit, maybe like Saturday extra credit, I think is what she's calling it. I saw Bree Hall went right after her birthday, or maybe it was on her birthday. She was on the bike. And then Tessa, I've seen a few clips of her getting in some extra work, which is also exciting in terms of just being able to unlock extra levels to their game and, you know, just get stronger, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like being able to go for longer. So, you know, as we start talking about lineups and things like that, trying to predict possibly what's going to happen, just being able to see them prepare for, you know, wanting to, you know, potentially take somebody's spot or just step up and play more minutes and be even more of an influence than they were last year. Those are things that I've kind of been picking up on over the offseason that are exciting to me. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, only 10 former McDonald's All-Americans on the roster, and it would have been 12 had Chloe Kitts not enrolled mid-year and Adele Tack been healthy her senior season. Most certainly would have been a McDonald's All-American. All right, so we'll come back to the roster. But I forgot to say, going back to Joyce Edwards, the other player, and there are several great players, some in the class of 24, but some in the class of 25. But Jasmine Jazzy Davidson, I think probably about a 6'1" lefty guard from Oregon that South Carolina is a finalist for. She was really impressive. And I'm very partial to left-handed players because it just goes against your muscle memory to have to guard a left-handed player because everything is backwards. And she just doesn't go to her left. And she's considered by many the most dynamic scorer in the class of 25. And so I did want to mention that. All right, let's go to the schedule because 2 more games have been added since we last spoke. And those are going to be in Fort Myers, Florida, okay, on November 28th and 30th, where the Gamecocks will play Iowa State on November 28th, and then Purdue on November 30th. And then it's also been announced that South Carolina will host Duke on December 5th in the SEC ACC Challenge. And so we know about those games. We know about the season opener in Las Vegas against Michigan. We also know, is it November 10th, NC State in Charlotte?
yep.
Okay, we know they will play at UCLA, and we know UConn will return once again because of the canceled game. So South Carolina can make up an SEC game with Ole Miss because they missed because several players had COVID. So we know those games plus Texas and Oklahoma coming in the league. I mean, South Carolina once again is going to have one of the top 2 or 3 toughest schedules in the country Your thoughts on the non-conference schedule and adding the Fort Myers, I think they call it the Fort Myers tip-off, whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
It'll be the Gamecock Invitational is what it's really going to be.
Yeah, the structure of that event is interesting to me because the other side of the other division is playing in an actual like bracket, whereas South Carolina is just playing these two games. So that's interesting to me. But yeah, it's some Thanksgiving hoops. You didn't really get that last year. They played the day after Thanksgiving. And I was home, and while I was watching it, I was worried that I was going to miss seeing an Ashlyn Watkins dunk in real life, but luckily I did not. But yeah, so they'll play November 28th, so Thanksgiving Day, against Iowa State, which I think will be fun. I'm excited to see Audie Crooks kind of match up with South Carolina and what that possibly looks like, because she had such a great year last year and a really good tournament. So I'm excited to see kind of what that looks like, because this isn't really a team that South Carolina would ever really see probably. So that's fun. Purdue on the 30th, so South Carolina fans are going to have to, hope that the scheduling is good with the Clemson game, with that kind of splitting their attention. But I think it's fun. They didn't really do anything like this last year, I imagine probably because of the Paris trip, so fair enough. But that's exciting that they'll be able to go down there for a little bit of like kind of, not a tournament, like I said, because it's not a bracket, but like, an event, right? And those things are always fun too in terms of like bonding. So there's, like we talked about, it's a lot of returners, right? So everybody already knows each other really well. But like for the freshmen and for Miriam to be able to go on a trip together like that and probably do something fun on one of the days, or at least like an afternoon or something like that, take advantage of being in Florida, where it probably is less cold than it will be here at that time of year. So I think that'll be fun. I'm excited for that. But I mean, with that, and then also with UCLA and also with the Vegas tip-off against Michigan to start the season, I got my work cut out for me in terms of my travel and my travel budget. But I am excited. Like, these are games that are going to be really fun to watch, and trips that are going to be really fun to make. And it will also, help them, I think, too, in terms of prepping for the tournament. Because last year we talked about on the Tobacco road trip, having those games so close together. It was their first really like road trip for real, because, they did Paris, but they were there for days beforehand, and then they came home and they were home for a while. So, I think all that traveling, the cross-country stuff that they're going to have to do, because I was kind of surprised that they were going to be in Vegas and then come back home and then, go out to LA. I thought they might try to like do stuff like that kind of all in one trip, just to try and avoid having to do so much cross-country stuff. But I think it'll prep them for the rigors of the end of the season. So that'll be good. I think the Duke game being part of the ACC SEC challenge is going to push back that contract that they have with them by a year or something like that. So I imagine that Duke will continue being on the schedule for a little bit longer. So that's also fun. I think that was such a good game last year that might not have been as good of a game if it was at South Carolina as opposed to at Duke, to be fair, but still, fun matchup that otherwise, wouldn't necessarily probably happen all that often. I am kind of bummed that UNC wasn't the ACC SEC challenge school, just because otherwise they won't play, which is kind of a bummer, because I think that, Coach Staley talked about wanting that game to be one. She talked about it at the tournament, and I think she might have also talked about it when they played during the regular season, being a game that she wished was able to be part of the schedule every year, just to have that, battle of the Carolinas. And I'm sure that also kind of helps with recruiting in both states, for both schools. So it is a bummer that they aren't willing to play South Carolina very often anymore, since South Carolina got good, but it is what it is. So that's where we are with that. Other non-conference games though also NC State. It's exciting that we're going to get a Final Four rematch so early in the season, and that it's only going to be an hour and 30 minutes up the road. So I'm pumped for that. But other non-conference games, the East Carolina home and home series is going to end, I think, in South Carolina this season. And then Fred Schmiel and his Bowling Green team will be in South Carolina as well. So that will end at that home and home, but then also be a nice homecoming for him and his family. I know he was excited when South Carolina came to see him last year. And then I think maybe it was last week or maybe the week before, but I don't know if you saw the video of Victoria Saxton and Aaliyah Boston kind of like surprising him at their camp thing. And that was really cute. You can tell that he has a lot of love for those young women and that they have a lot of love for him. And also like the coaching staff and everybody, you know, so I think it'll be extra fun that him and his family are able to come back to Columbia. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, tough non-conference schedule as per usual. I'm excited for it. I'm also excited for the SEC schedule because other than Texas being home and away, a lot of the exciting games, I think, on the conference schedule are going to be at home. So that makes it a little easier for fans to be able to go to that. So yeah, I mean, it looks fun. We've got like 25 games, I think, at this point that we know that they're happening. We just don't necessarily know when all of them are. So yeah, it will not be boring.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Gamecocks to come to Austin to play Texas. Shout out Dr. V. Looking forward to seeing her when the Gamecocks come to Texas. All right, so on the schedule and on particularly Tobacco Road, okay, let's face it, Carolina is the third program in their state right now. Okay, NC State is the best program in that state, Wes Miller. Okay, Carol Lawson and Duke, I mean, they were knocking on the door of the Elite Eight or Final Four, and she's added transfers, and she's got an outstanding post player from San Antonio. I think Robertson, is it Ariana Robinson? Something. She's coming. She's 6'4". She'll be a freshman at Duke. She was on that team. Carol Lawson also spent time with the 18-time now world champion Boston Celtics organization and Brad Stevens, who may be the most brilliant mind in all of basketball. A great coach. I mean, the dude took Butler to the Final Four, to the national championship game 2 years in a row. Butler, folks, okay? And if a Gordon Hayward shot at the buzzer doesn't go in and out, he would have beat Coach K for the Natty. And so she's going to build a great program. She's building a great program there. North Carolina, I mean, they don't want to play because they don't want to get that behind spank. Let's just call it like it is. They don't want to take an L, okay? They don't want to come to South Carolina and play in front of 18,000 fans and get blown out, okay? If that hadn't been South Carolina's first true road game last year, that game would have been in February. South Carolina would have rolled them like my wife rolls a kolache in the morning before she puts it in the oven to bake, okay? They are soft as bread, all right? That's all I've got to say about that. So, but you do get to recruit that state because you are playing Duke again, and Duke, quite frankly, will owe South Carolina another home game as part of the home and home, in addition to the ACC SEC challenge. Maybe North Carolina's coach will be like the Cowardly Lion and get a Medal of Courage at the end of the movie and decide to play South Carolina. You know, maybe at a neutral site. They used to play in Myrtle Beach. That was cool. Sylvia Hatchell, she didn't mind playing. Okay. But at that time, North Carolina was a national championship Final Four program. All right, so I mean, we talk about the 8 returners. You add a wealth of riches in Miriam Dowda, Joyce Edwards. Craig says another undefeated season is coming. I could see it. I'm still wondering why Southern Cal running from South Carolina. Okay, I saw the video they posted of Kiki Iriafen dunking the basketball. I'd like to see her and Ashlyn Swatkins going at each other. Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
Why is Gottlieb not wanting to play South Carolina and Las Vegas? Are they cowards? Why won't they play? Why won't Stanford play anymore? Come on. Get real. That's what I say.
Yeah, that would be so fun. That would be so fun. I don't know what potential conversations have looked like maybe, or if they've been had between the two schools, but yeah, that would be a freaking blast because you also have Juju and Malaysia part of that class of just like phenom freshmen who are so exciting to watch. And yeah, I think that would be such a
Smith, Joyce Edwards.
right. Like it would just be a blast. But I mean, I don't know if they've connected or tried or whatever or anything like that because I know that Coach Staley was talking about how the original opponent for Las Vegas backed out. That was not Southern Cal. I know that. But I don't know if they've tried to connect for some kind of game maybe with each other. But I hope that happens in the next few years. That would be just so much fun. I know people were talking about when the bracket came out last year for the tournament that it would be fun if they could meet up, eventually. But gosh, it would take so long and so many things would have to happen for that to work out. So if they could just do it in the regular season or some kind of event like the Fort Myers tip-off, something like that, that would be a blast for all the fans, I think. I think based on what I've seen on social media, the Southern Cal fans want smoke from South Carolina and South Carolina wants smoke from the Southern Cal fans. So everybody would enjoy it.
All right, so just like my first year at South Carolina in the fall of 1983, we smoked Southern Cal in football 38-14. We ran the split back veer with Kent Haygood and Thomas Dendy, and there was this Alan Mitchell from Batesburg, Leesville. To quote my man from Remember the Titans, 8 plays, just like Novocaine. Give it long enough, it works. We smoked them. Frederick in the Nana Sports chat box says they're afraid of losing the USC moniker. Okay, South Carolina is USC in women's basketball. And I got to think ABC and ESPN, which puts on the Hall of Fame Classic or whatever they call it in Las Vegas, they wanted that battle. Juju Watkins, Southern Cal, even before Kiki Iriafen, okay. If you didn't want that game, you're not very smart, ESPNW, which sometimes I really don't think you are that smart. So, I don't know. All right, so let's talk about Asia Wilson, the much anticipated, and finally, the Nike signature A1 shoe and clothing line, the necklace, the design. It's out. Is this just another precursor of South Carolina going to Nike or the Jumpman? Because you can't deny when your greatest player and the greatest player in the world in women's sports is with Nike. And she also, by the way, is from Columbia and has a statue in front of the arena in which you play. I mean, your thoughts on the A1 signature line from Nike, and then, I mean, Auburn just dropped Under Armour. Like I said, Under Armour, like the bald eagle, is on the endangered species list.
Yeah, I have been thinking about that as well in terms of South Carolina's apparel partnership, just because, I mean, you got to think that Under Armour will be holding on for dear life, right? So like they would probably want to throw as much as they could at South Carolina to be able to hold on to it. Especially exacerbated by the Auburn situation, right? So I'm intrigued to see kind of how that plays out, because not only do you have Asia Wilson as a Nike athlete, but you also have Dawn Staley as a lifetime Nike athlete. So like, what's going on there? I would think that would be kind of an easy matchup to, procure. But I just think like Under Armour's desperation, like how is that gonna how are those two things gonna kind of battle out, right? Potentially. But that's definitely something that I'm gonna be watching for. I want to say the contract expires in 2026, but I might be wrong. I knew it at one point. But it's coming, right? Like it's coming. So we'll see what happens with that. But I gotta think that it's just like kind of a no-brainer to make the switch at this point. But I don't know what the behind the scenes is. As far as Asia's logo, I know there were like mixed reviews about it initially. I really like it. I think
It's
at
cool.
first I
thought it was cool. Very unique.
I had trouble at first kind of like figuring out exactly what it was, but also geometry was my worst math that I took in school. So I attributed that to myself just not being good at shapes and spatial awareness and things like that, and not necessarily like a flaw in the design. Because at first I was seeing sports bra, like sideways sports bra on the shirt. And then once I saw it on other things, so like on her fingerless gloves in that ad where it was like her hand with the rings and the nails and stuff, and it looked really cool. When I saw it on the necklace and all these other things, it was much easier for me to identify the A with the star sparkle in it. And so I really like it. It's unique and it's not just a letter. So it's tailored to her and it has different kind of like levels to it. I think she is so smart in terms of like, and her team and everybody in terms of like the marketing and kind of like trademark stuff she's able to do, because it feels like the glitter emoji is hers now. And then also like the placement of the apostrophe that's in her name in all of these other things associated with her, right? The A1 shoe, the M apostrophe VP, and all that stuff. It's just like, it fits so well, all of these things together. I'm sure that was kind of a pain for her growing up when people spelled her name wrong all the time and she had to explain that to them. But in terms of like marketing and your brand and like being able to recognize that stuff, I think all of that put together has just been so good. And I'm really excited for this rollout, because even though it took a while for us to get to this point where she had all of these things procured and was able to start the process of designing things, I think she has put so much time, effort, and energy into making sure that it's of the caliber she wants it to be, that it's going to be like really good and really fun. So yeah, I like it. I think it's really thoughtful and iconic, and I'm glad that it's not just a letter, because that's boring.
And so not only the best-selling author, Asia Wilson, the best women's basketball player in the world, but Dear Black Girls, the name of her book, she ensured for the hoodie for the A1 brand that the material on the inside of the hoodie would be specifically designed because Black women, all different kinds of hair, braids, all kinds of different hair. The texture, it's different. And I thought that was very cool that she insisted on that. And so I say good for her, but also good for Dawn Staley, who was at the huge fashion show in Paris, right? With Pharrell, with Louis Vuitton, with Chanel, with Gucci. I mean, I gotta believe not only does she get to wear their best stuff, she's probably getting some bank on the side from that.
Yeah, that's been fun to watch this off season as well. I keep talking with people, and I'm just like, the thing about Dawn Staley one of the things about Dawn Staley that's so interesting is like she has a kind of cultural capital and a kind of motion and influence across pop culture just in general that I don't think any other coach of any team ever, like in the American zeitgeist of sports, has had what she has in that regard, right? Because like I'm trying to think, and I'm not gonna act like I know everything, right? But like the most like recent memory coach I can think of with as much, for lack of a better word, swag as Dawn Staley is Pat Riley with his Armani suits and being on the cover of GQ and all that kind of stuff. But even then, it was like that was his thing. It wasn't like he was going to Milan or Paris or whatever for Fashion Week stuff during the off season, right? Like it's just so different. And I just think it's really cool that, a coach can have the same kind, can be like rubbing elbows and be basically like a peer, but also I guess kind of like an elder of like with all of these players that are like the most popular across all of American sports, like taking that photo with Stephon Diggs and the pictures that she had over the offseason with Serena Williams and all this stuff, right? Like these are people who take up so much of American sports cultural capital, and she's right there with them and they're fans of her. And I just think that's like something that no other program of any kind, professional or collegiate, has. And so, South Carolina is paying for her like qualifications and her brain and, all and her skills, but they're also paying for her brand value, which you can't necessarily like put an actual like number to or whatever in terms of valuing it. But it's just like you have an icon of the sport, an icon of, American sports period, who is like the representation for your school and your program. And that's huge. So yeah, it's fun stuff. It's wild. It's also exciting that she's winning the Jimmy V Award, as if she didn't already have like basically all of the most prestigious awards that you can get in sports. That one is also like way up there. I'm excited to watch her give her speech for that, because I'm sure it's going to be resounding, because coaches are good at motivational kind of speaking anyway. And so I think it'll be cool to see her kind of speak from the heart and potentially talk about Nikki McCray and talk about her sister and how they've impacted her in terms of her mission to try and help educate people and get people tested for things and stuff like that for cancer awareness. So yeah, she's having a heck of an off season. All the players are, and she is as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I love that phrase, cultural capital. You can't put a price on that, like you said. Also, I would call her a fashion mogul. Okay, and that's a big word for me. I mean, with my lower Pickens County public education. But also her work with cancer, losing Nikki McCray, a Team USA teammate, essentially a lifelong friend, and an architect of the first national championship team. And I go back to her visiting the children's cancer facility, right? And making the bracelets with the little girl, right? And then her the little girl making Dawn a new one for the NCAA tournament of the Final Four. I mean, I know she's not big on being emotional, but I think maybe two of the three closest people in her life were taken from her due to cancer and her mother, Estelle, which was my grandmother's name, was taken with Alzheimer's, the same disease that robbed me of my mom, who was the most vibrant, toughest, didn't take any crap from anybody. But anyway, Dawn Staley, I will say, Eric Hyman told me, and I don't think he would mind me repeating this, Dawn Staley is the most fierce negotiator he ever had encountered in his career. And he said she combines growing up in the streets of Philadelphia, that education, with a UVA business degree. And I can't wait to see what the details of that new contract are. I have a really good idea that it will be, as she's talked about, equality. We know Lamont Paris got a big contract. I don't think he was the happiest person in Columbia when he got that contract. But that's all I'll say about that. So, Payton, tell us what you got coming up for the rest of the summer and what's coming up on Go Gamecocks, and what other travels do you have planned before football season?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily plan on leaving town again. I just got back from Tampa, a wedding in Tampa from one of my childhood friends, which was wild. It's crazy that people my age and my friends are getting married and becoming parents and things like that. But also exciting. In terms of stuff I've got going on, well, I wrote a story recently when Paul Manieri became the South Carolina baseball coach about the investment that the athletic department has decided to put into him and the rest of the coaching staff. And after writing that story, I got a lot of emails from people asking me for an explanation as to why South Carolina women's basketball doesn't generate revenue here because it's so popular. I am working on a project, have been working on a project all summer trying to explain all of those things. So be on the lookout for that in the next probably month or two. Hopefully that's makes it easier for people to kind of digest and see where potentially in the future there are going to be more money-making opportunities for the sport of women's basketball, but just kind of how all of that works in South Carolina's financial commitment to the sport that is unlike really anybody else's, and the success they've been able to have because of that and all that kind of stuff. And then other stuff going on at the state. I mean, that soccer game is coming up soon, so I think we're going to be getting some coverage for you guys kind of leading up to that. And then we're about to be in the throes of preseason football media availability. So SEC Media Days coming up, Birdies with Beamers coming up, and then just South Carolina Football Media Days coming up. So we'll be turning out lots of content from all those things. So stay tuned for all of that.
All right. So I did have one other thing here. So as a Florida Gator, what are your thoughts on the impending demise of the SEC, of the ACC? Okay, the SEC and the Big Ten are clearly the big two. But what are your thoughts about the demise of the ACC and Florida State and Clemson and North Carolina and all these teams possibly being divided up outside of the undesirables between the, look, you're kind of in the same boat as South Carolina fans. You're playing Florida State every year, right? Wouldn't it be better if it was a conference game? That way you're not playing, which we all know it's coming, 9 SEC games, right? And then you're still playing Florida State, who, by the way, right now, the best program in Florida. Let's call it like it is, just like South Carolina, 9 SEC games, and Clemson, although they continue to slip because Dabo can talk about embracing name, image, and likeness, being the shyster televangelist, saying we're we're building our program in the name, image, and likeness of Jesus Christ. Well, brother, that ain't bringing you any players. Okay. They're hitting the portal and you're not replacing them. Okay. You just put more of your friends' kids on scholarship.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't want the rivalry games to go away. That's kind of where I'm at. So I want Florida State and I want Georgia to stay on the schedule, even though those games have not been kind to Florida fans as of late. But I just don't like, that's the thing that makes me sad about all of this, right? Like, I know that the money-making venture is growing and the students deserve their cut and all this kind of stuff. I just hate how football is like ravaging kind of everything, and like the romanticism of college sports is getting messed up in the process of that. I feel like there feasibly was totally a way where the powers that be in college sports could have thought about these things and planned ahead in order to preserve some of that stuff. But I just don't want it to turn into, I want everybody to get their just due and what they deserve financially and otherwise, but I don't want it to turn into professional football in the way where it's like, you know, fan bases and the camaraderie of, you know, my grandfather went to this school, so I'm a lifelong fan and all that kind of stuff, and like the fight songs and the tradition and things like that, the stuff that makes college sports so like beloved. I just don't want that to go away. I think Shane Beamer talks about that a lot, like the pageantry of college sports and how him growing up as a coach's son and then, you know, taking that on as a career himself, that's like his kind of favorite part of all of it. And I agree with him on that. That's why, I mean, I grew up in a house where like Gator sports were the thing that we cared about the most. And granted, I was from Jacksonville, Florida, so it's not like there were a whole lot of professional sports teams for us to root for, right? But like that was the thing in my house growing up. And so I just don't want the like romanticism of that to go away. So that's my main concern. I don't care who is where. I just don't want basketball to get killed by it. And I don't want the rivalry games to disappear. I just want to be able to hold on to some of the fun tradition of it all.
So see, for me, I grew up 8 miles from Clemson. And my dad joined the Gamecock Club in 1978. And we started going to games, every home game. And just like you grew up in a Gator home, even though we were the outliers, right? And still, the first college football game I ever attended was Clemson and Georgia Tech in 1974. I was 10 years old. You were not a gleam in your daddy's eye at that point. But we're leaving the game, and I see all the fans. Clemson won the game. And I looked at my dad and I was like, how come we not Clemson fans? We're like we live 8 miles from Clemson. And my dad looked at me, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. He looked at me and he said, he pointed to the crowd piling out and all going in one direction. And he said, son, every time I see the crowd going that way, I turn around and go the damn other way. And that's why we not Clemson fans. And so that's why I attended the University of South Carolina, because I grew up loving the Gamecocks. There was no other place I wanted to go. And I was going to be a journalism major, which I was when I first attended the university. But I knew I'd never lose this Pickens County accent. And I'm a pretty good writer. But I found a new passion and changed my major. And that was that. So I understand. All right, so Payton, thanks so much for being with us. Great stuff as always, and I can't wait to hear you asking Shane Beamer questions at his press conferences. And I guess we'll talk about Gamecock football and women's basketball at the same time when we have you on again. So have a great rest of the summer, and we'll look forward to catching up with you down the road.
Yes, sir. You too. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That is Payton Titus. And so I will say, for all the haters, I'm glad she's coming up with this story on everybody that talks about, we're not any good in football because we put all our money in women's basketball. No, you don't. And there's plenty of money to go around. Plus, can you really put a price on Gamecock women's basketball and Dawn Staley, who was at Milan or Paris, wherever, who's won 3 national championships, who's on national television at basically every time there's a game where her players are playing, all over social media. The coverage her program gets, you cannot put a dollar figure on the advertising revenue they provide for free. You just can't do it. And it's more than a break even when you consider that. To me, all that free advertisement and publicity, it's a huge moneymaker and provides unparalleled publicity for Gamecock athletics and for the University of South Carolina. All right, so before we sign off today, I did want to mention Lamont Paris had a press conference. The new roster is out, the newcomers, and one of the returners has changed numbers. The newcomers, of course, have different numbers. So Jordan Butler, Lamont Paris talked about him and unlocking the potential in his offensive game. He's listed as a forward, 7 foot, 240 pounds. We know he was a top 75 recruit out of high school, went to Missouri, needs to get bigger, stronger. Okay, Nick Pringle will wear number 5. I thought he was going to wear 55 because in some of the practice videos, he was wearing 55, but he's listed 6'10", 220. Okay, he's from Seabrook and was at Alabama. Point guard Jamari Thomas, who transferred from Norfolk State, will wear number 6. Okay, Austin Hero was put on scholarship. He is the 13th scholarship player, and he will wear number 13, the younger brother of Miami Heat star Tyler Hero. Okay, and then Cam Scott will wear number 23 as a freshman. And the other newcomer, Oku Federico, listed at 6'10", he will wear number 33. But Lamont Paris talked about how the team will be different in that maybe they don't have a big that can stretch the floor like BJ Mack. But let's face it, BJ Mack, you had to respect him, but he was about a 29% three-point shooter. I do think that Colin Murray Boyles will be able to do that, but be more effective because he's more athletic. He can take players off the dribble. Plus, South Carolina really didn't have a rim runner and a guy that can be in the dunker spot. You have that in Nick Pringle. That makes you different. You have Jordan Butler, who can do that. And Arden Conyers. a guy that Lamont Parrish raved about his potential and that he has an opportunity to be a significant contributor as a stretch four, as a three-point shooter, but as somebody at 6'7", 210 who has gotten bigger and much more effective as a three-point shooter. Cam Scott, an SEC player in every way. And so this team has the makings with Jacoby Wright coming back, with Zach Davis, having another year. By the way, he changed his number from 12 to 2. Miles Studi coming back, another veteran player. He also talked about Morris Ugasuk and him getting stronger, more confident, and having the ability to be a major contributor as well. And I really like Oku Federico, but he's not going to have to just step right in because you got Colin Murray Boyles and Nick Pringle, and Jordan Butler has played college basketball. And you've still got the BBV who provides a lot of toughness, okay, and is a great practice player and a great leader, kind of like Sakima Walker. Her coming back, do I think she'll be better? Yes. Do I think she'll play major minutes? Probably not. But from a leadership point, from her basically, from my sources saying she's kind of like the den mom of the team because she's such a veteran presence to that very inexperienced team last year outside of Pow Pow. Nobody had really been a consistent starter on a college basketball team. And so she brought that. But Walker, a great teammate, a great leader, somebody that the players respect, that works hard, and she was a National Junior College Player of the Year, so we'll see. All right, so to Gamecock football recruiting. So the Gamecocks currently have an unprecedented number of commitments in the summer of shame, 16. But I think we all know by now that's getting ready to shrink back to 15 as the top-rated commitment in the class, Shamari Earls, is most certainly on the verge of decommitting and probably going to Georgia. But I do think before South Carolina opens fall camp and before they open the season, they will have more than 16 commitments because there are a number of summertime decisions. All right. Soon and very soon, Kendall Daniels said he will be deciding, the 4-star safety from Virginia Beach, a guy that may very well commit to the University of South Carolina. Okay. 4-star or 3-star defensive tackle Bryce Jenkins from the DMV. He was all set to go to South Carolina. South Carolina needed another big defensive tackle. But just like Braden Lee, the cornerback who had been committed to South Carolina, a serious family situation got in the way, according to the reporting of Tony Morrell from thebigspur.com. Jenkins was all set to commit to South Carolina this Saturday. He told the coaches that weeks ago. But then something major happened in the family. I don't know all the particulars. I do know in Braden Lee's case, his dad passed away, and he felt like he needed to stay closer to home and play at Maryland. And I anticipate, unfortunately for the Gamecocks, Bryce Jenkins will do the same. So Alex Jones wrote a great piece on the Big Spur with some of the dates. So Jenkins is the first planned date. On July 18th, center Isaac Souls of Louisville Male, Kentucky, Male High School in Louisville, Kentucky, will decide between South Carolina, NC State. Kentucky and Louisville also in it. I think it's South Carolina and NC State. I know NC State has this huge advantage in the RPM or whatever, but internally, South Carolina thinks it could be a coin flip. We'll see. On July 20th, defensive lineman, 4-star Bryce Davis out of Greensboro, he will decide between Clemson, Georgia, and South Carolina. I think South Carolina is a dark horse, but I wouldn't be shocked if they're the pick, but I don't expect them to be the pick. But I do think Sterling Lucas, tip of the hat for getting the Gamecocks really in the game with him. And then 4-star safety Lagonza Hayward from Lyons, Georgia, Toombs County High School, or maybe it's Lyon County in Toombs, Georgia. It's kind of like, I don't know, somebody with two first names. He's set to announce that's the day of the picnic event South Carolina will host, and maybe he's going to be there. Okay. Also, Brian Dawn from 24/7 Sports wrote a big feature about things he's looking for this month, a couple of which included South Carolina targets. I do think sometime in July, Jalen Gilchrist from Virginia Beach will announce he visited Georgia. He could go to any school in America. I think he's picking the Gamecocks. Also, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania wide receiver Lex Cyrus, 5'10", 170, a guy that runs 10 400 meters. He said after he visited Penn State on the first weekend in June, and then he visited South Carolina, he was making this decision. He said that going into the South Carolina visit. Well, South Carolina made a major move with Lex Cyrus, and there are some people that think he does have a desire to leave home and that he could end up committing to South Carolina. He said he was going to commit the first week in July. That's not happening, it doesn't look like. And so we'll see. But South Carolina is in the ballpark there. I do think South Carolina is the team to beat for what I think will be a will linebacker in Jaden Breaker, 6'3", 215 out of the Atlanta area. 5-star defensive end Jared Smith. I think South Carolina is the leader in the clubhouse there, although I do think he will attend that Big Cat weekend at Auburn. I think it's probably South Carolina and then Auburn. But I like where the Gamecocks are. And then there's Xavier Hardy, who will be the #1 junior college player right now and the #1 JUCO defensive lineman in the country. I anticipate he will commit to South Carolina prior to the season. And then Malik Clark from Rock Hill. A lot of people think it's a coin flip with South Carolina and North Carolina. We'll have to see what happens with him. Gamecock baseball, certainly expecting more commitments to go public. There's at least 2 baseball welcome homes out there. And I did want to mention the high school recruit that joined the Gamecocks, Audrey Wilson, she hit .506 with 7 home runs, 42 RBIs, All-State first team. Okay. And she went 4 for 7 with 4 RBIs in a 2-game sweep over West Florence in the state finals to win a state championship. So she is awesome, and she is enrolling as well as most of the players from Charlotte. Right-handed pitcher Neely Lamb from Charleston Southern and Quincy Lillo from Oklahoma. Wilson was at one time committed to Charlotte, and she chose Charlotte over Duke, who I think has the best coach, maybe probably the best coach in the country, to Oklahoma women's softball. So, Martin, I can't get into why Taylor was let go. There's some stuff on the message boards about it. If you want to know, tune in next Tuesday night in the Garnet Black Town Hall in overtime. All right, so tomorrow is Independence Day. It's the 4th of July. In 1776, our founding fathers came together and wrote the Declaration of Independence. John Hancock put his name on it in big letters. Thomas Jefferson wrote it basically to break away from the tyranny of the King of England and to form this great experiment of democracy that is now almost 250 years old. And so tomorrow we celebrate. There's fireworks. I still remember being at Myrtle Beach in 1976 on the bicentennial as a 12-year-old, staying at the Cadillac Court Hotel, which was owned by at that time, person from Liberty, my home, well, where I went to high school. And it was a great family time. So tomorrow, let's remember those brave souls that fought off the British in the War for Independence, and our founding fathers, and all our veterans of all the other wars that have kept this country independent and have kept alive the experiment of a representative in our country. All right, so I hope everybody has a great and safe 4th of July tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in at a special time. And for all our listeners on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, be a subscriber, hit the like button, get notified, give us a 5-star review. Follow me on Twitter at KAllset. Follow the show at Gamecock Pod. Become an annual VIP subscriber. You'll get all the overtimes live if you can tune in. Okay. Otherwise, you'll never get overtime because we don't record it on the town halls. But you'll get this podcast every single day, Monday through Friday. If you sign up today, you get basically 3 months free off an annual VIP subscription. All right, and if you become a monthly VIP subscriber, that's basically the cost of one trip to Starbucks per month. So for Payton Titus, This is Keith Alsap saying thanks to all of you. Thanks to all our great Gamecocks. Thanks to Craig and Martin and Frederick and my guy Chris Payne and Lawrence and my guy Clint, who is the king of recruiting, for being in the chat box, and to everybody else who watched live on YouTube, all the fams. I love you guys. And to all my loyal Patreon subscribers, y'all don't know how blessed you made my life in this journey now since 2015 or 16, doing this podcast and putting it on YouTube show. So until next week, okay, this is Keith Alsep saying, God bless America. God bless all of you, and go Gamecocks. Until then, this is Keith Alsep signing off, saying, I love you guys, and God bless America. Until then, this is Keith Alsep signing off for Gamecock Pod Live and Gamecock Pod Daily. Until then, I'm out of here.